Well, joining me now to discuss is Sebastian Elischer, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Florida. Grateful for your time, Sebastian. The U.S. efforts to push for diplomacy and dialogue have obviously not been very successful, and Ecowas Chair Bola Tinubu has reiterated that diplomacy is still the preferred route. Just how likely is it, in your opinion, for this to be resolved without military intervention?
I think it's a very tough situation right now. I right now don't see a way how the junta in Niger will give in to the current existing pressure from outside. The junta has married itself to this idea that it wants to go down the same route as their peers in Burkina Faso and Mali. I think on the Western side and on the Ecowas side, there was hope that the junta would not be in a position to consolidate its power domestically. This appears to have happened. There will be and there should be renewed focus on upping the diplomatic pressure on the junta. Right now, I'm very skeptical given what we heard yesterday from Victoria Nuland.
And you talked there about upping the pressure. So let's talk also about sanctions, because Bola Tinubu has today ordered fresh financial sanctions targeting those involved in the coup, on top of the economic and travel sanctions already issued. What's likely the impact of these sanctions? I mean, could they make a real difference at all on the junta's moves?
I think they can. Niger is highly dependent and more so than Burkina Faso, more so than Mali or Guinea or Chad, on access to the harbor in Benin, on access to humanitarian aid and on budgetary aid. And we do know from events surrounding the last military coup in 2010 against an authoritarian civilian incumbent, that at the time those sanctions imposed upon Niger by Nigeria in the electricity sector worked fairly well, and were one reason why the removal of an authoritarian incumbent occurred. So I do think Niger will feel these tensions. They are already visible along the lines of trucks not being able to leave or enter Niger. We are seeing issues in the electricity supply in the capital, Niamey. Those sanctions will be felt fairly soon, and much more so than in Mali or Burkina Faso, which are less dependent on trade relations with the immediate neighborhood, even though they are also landlocked countries. But Nigeria is the big player here. And it will be up to Nigeria, I believe, to make a strong case for the return of constitutional order.
Right, and West African leaders are, of course, set to hold a summit on Thursday to discuss all of this. What can we expect to come out of this meeting?
We can expect that at this stage, ECOWAS will renew its commitment to the return of constitutional order, that ECOWAS will demand that President Bazoum, who was elected, will not remain in detention. This is something that we have not seen in Africa in a long time. We normally see military coups and presidents are detained, but then they are released shortly thereafter. President Bazoum has been in detention now since July 26. ECOWAS will pressure or will try and put pressure on the junta to release him. ECOWAS will have to try and close its ranks. It will have to try very hard to put up a united front, because a lot is at stake for ECOWAS. If this junta is allowed to remain in power, ECOWAS and the Western world will have lost not only a key partner in security assistance, but really one of the few remaining countries in the Sahel that's not yet under military rule. And it will be of uttermost importance for ECOWAS to continue and try and put diplomatic pressure on Niger. And I'm certain that's what's going to happen on Thursday. If these actions are without success, I personally remain skeptical that ECOWAS is willing and capable of putting together an intervention force. So a lot depends on the meeting on Thursday.
Right, and just briefly, if you will, and lastly, if the standoff continues, obviously there's a risk of the conflict snowballing into something bigger. I mean, if this happens, I mean, if it comes to that, what kind of impact could it have on Niger and the region?
If we are really seeing a military intervention, which personally I don't think we will see, then that will have a devastating humanitarian impact, and it will have a devastating security impact, as all of these countries are embroiled in military confrontations with jihadis and insurgencies. It would have devastating consequences for the civilian population. And quite frankly, it would make a mockery out of institution building in West Africa in the last 3 decades. What I don't think will happen is a great power confrontation. I think should ECOWAS be unable to exert diplomatic pressure on Niger, I'm fairly certain the United States will withdraw because legally it will be obliged to stop collaborating with the junta. And I think it's unlikely that France will get involved in a military conflict in the Sahel. I do not see this happen right now.
All right, Sebastian Elischer, professor at the University of Florida, thank you very much for speaking to us and sharing your analysis.